Today's July 10th. This is the weekly governance meeting for the Tangle Application Network. So in the Notion form, I just started adding like what we've already approved, just because we're going to start probably, we're starting to really make some decisions. And so I just wanted to basically put, when we make decisions, I'm going to try to put them up here so that we're not discussing and rehashing out things that really ends up taking probably the most time in sort of these situations. But just the big things that we've agreed on is a 12-month vesting plan, is the 40, 30, 20, 10 of the 80% community tokens for the next 4 years. Put the note that this is to be reviewed yearly. This is just sort of an initial. And then we're going to manage those 80% of the tokens through the multi-sig on the BSC until one day, hopefully we have a multi-sig on the layer 1. The initial setup is a 3 of 5, which certainly I think we should bump up because it's such a large amount once we get a little bit more participation and a little bit more organization. But how about now, Saphir? Can you hear us now? Can you hear me now? Okay, I think he's still working out his bugs. So the big thing I wanted to go over quickly was we're just waiting for Garrett, but I set up the multi-sig. We have Edward, Bill Poster, Saphir. And what's interesting with Gnosis is I saw that they have these nested safes. So that basically you can create essentially sub-safes under your main safe, which I think is pretty cool, because if we look at one that we were doing with the Tangle LLC, really it keeps a pretty good track record of all your payments that go out. And if you, as the, and everyone in their own Gnosis safe can essentially put identifiers for those addresses. So it just helps as in sort of the bookkeeping of it. When we get to that point of doing payouts and incomes, whoever, I mean, definitely myself and whoever else, I'll certainly keep a track in a spreadsheet, that gets public of all payments going in and out. And then of course, as I always did, then you link those to the online chain. But the big thing is we really have to name the addresses, right? That's where a blockchain is always transparent with the addresses. It's just you need to identify the addresses to those address receivers, the names there. Without those, then it basically gets obscured. And I think if we're going to act transparently, then we always want to show publicly, hey, this is where these tokens are going. So I kind of like this idea of nested safe, and potentially it's something that we can do to break down sort of, and it will help financially to organize. So if we say, okay, of the 40% in year 1, we're going to use, let's say, just for instance, 10% for governance and 25% for technical, we could actually have separate wallets. So all the payments going out of governance are going to be for governance. All the payments going out of the technical wallet go to technical building. So this is good. Once we get Garrett, we'll probably, if anyone doesn't have BSC, I'll just personally send them a little bit. It's like, a penny per transaction, but you need to have a little bit for the gas, for the signing, and then we'll practice the signing. And then when everyone feels comfortable, then we can, maybe do a quick check with the community, and then we can transfer the 80% from, which I believe Garrett has it now. Then we'll get it going. Then we can start giving out incentives. So in the incentive channel over the last week, we've been trying to discuss, now that we got the 40% for year 1, is how can we break that down even more? And I proposed, as an initial, like, hey, let's just kind of get some brainstorming going. So I threw out there of breaking it down even further to technical requirements to launch the network, technical documentation. So when devs come into the community, they have the tools they need to build TAN. And those are the 2 key ones. I mean, those are the key ones that are basically going to also allow the network to launch, such as, the technical documentation of how to run a coordinator, as we're going to have multiple coordinators for the initial setup. And then dApps, we need something to do. So dApps that can be launched immediately on TAN, such as being forked from Shimmer, anything that's open source already that we can fork and integrate. It would be great to have that team, like let's say Sooniverse is open source, but it would be nice if someone from the Sooniverse community was able to integrate that, and we can certainly give incentive tokens there. Governance, definitely is a big one, especially for a fully open community being built from the ground up as TAN. And then marketing narratives, basically, how can we let people know the vision of layer one of it being a feeless network is alive, that, researchers that were building on Shimmer, people that were building on Shimmer, and then all of a sudden it got dropped. Hey, take what you were building. I'm getting a call, guys, so just give me 1 second here. Hey, Kyle. Yep. Yep. No, no. It's not the nail room. It's the washing room. I think it's second up from the top on the left. No problem. Bye. Okay, sorry about that. So go back to that. So marketing, I think again, that's the biggest thing of letting people know, hey, you can continue your projects, and this is also a community from the ground up, right? This is a community, truly community decentralized, even in decentralized governance. There's no central control here, and we're trying to do it as transparent and free as possible. Utility applications, for example, a Discord bot that will give an alert when tokens are moved from the main wallet, or the, if we call them the nested safes, the kind of sub wallets. And I think, that's just, again, to say we're going to be transparent is one thing, but to actually be transparent is another. And I really like, the fact of crypto and automation is, you don't have to depend on some human, you know, writing a message, hey, we're moving this, right? We've moved these tokens. We can automate this stuff so that we take the human error out of that. And then it's, if we're going to be transparent, we actually force ourselves to be transparent rather than, moving some tokens and saying, oh, I forgot to write that, et cetera, et cetera. And then infrastructure support, such as web hosting, website design, any project management software, et cetera. I mean, there's going to be some things that, we're going to have monthly expenses. It's just kind of how it is. But again, we can either liquidate some of those tokens, or I was thinking, even if there's people in sort of this governance group that would say, hey, let's just do I'll do an OTC purchase just to not affect liquidity in the market right now. If it's only like $50 a month or something for like a web hosting fee, which, I'd be happy to help out on that. So we had that discussion going in the incentive channel. And then Remix brought up some good idea and just was really focusing on prioritizing the technical aspect. And then I basically took that and created it in an Airtable, and not only broke down the percentage, but also tried to break down the first year into these segment categories. And then kind of based on what he was saying and prioritizing, I think is at the final. And then I put it in a link, which I can put in the chat here. 1 second. Okay, so I'll put the link in the chat. And basically this is breaks down the allocation for the first year, where of the 40%, 45% of that 40% will go to basically technical, which is ultimately being 18% of total supply, in year one being focused on technical requirements, coordinator, documentation, onboarding devs, etc., everything along those lines. Of that 40% in year one, 20% would be towards governance, which would be 8% of the total supply, 10% towards marketing, 4% of the total supply, and then 5% of that 40%, which is 2% of the total supply, utility applications, and then another 5%, 2% total supply for non-technical infrastructure website. Again, we don't have to use all this. It's just sort of getting a guidance, a little bit kind of to how we can get this going. And then I broke down in columns of, if we essentially did four of the 40% in year one. If we broke that down into 4 quarters, but we did like 40% in the first quarter and then 20%, 20%, 20% in quarters two, three, and four thereafter, and then broke that down into tokens of how much tokens we have for each of those segments. So, I think this could be just a good guideline just to get things going so we can start giving out incentives. But we always, want to be careful because you don't want to give too much out, where there's not enough at the end of the year, or you don't want to give too much out towards governance or marketing, and then we don't have enough tokens to really get the technical side working. So it's always a constant ebb and flow, balancing and watch. And maybe we're a little tighter in the beginning, but then we see, okay, towards the end of quarter one, we can kind of beef it up a little bit if we need to get some project tasks taken care of, or we want to focus on something. So yeah, if people want to take a look at that, and then if they have any questions or concerns or ideas, but that was all kind of built around Edward's kind of comments and Remix's kind of comments to try to come up with something that's, based on what people are getting active about. Sorry, one second. All right. And then I think at some point, for the individuals that are really being active, you could pseudo say founders, I guess, like Tangle Pay Team, Garrett, myself, and Saphir will probably come up with something of a small percentage to, compensate for kind of the work that we're doing. And then we have, he messaged me, I would say JIGL, because I'm always not sure, sometimes people put an abbreviation and they want you to say the abbreviation. Other times they want you to kind of pronounce it out as what that abbreviation would sound like. So Jiggle messaged me and he said, it goes by Jiggle. It's a lot easier to say than JIGL. And that's kind of how he wanted to be stated. But Jiggle was discussing that he can take over the web hosting for the website. The website's been down for the last couple weeks. Not sure what's going on there. I think it was just like an initial get it going, build it from the Tangle Pay team, and then hand it over to the community. So last Jiggle was saying was that, when I brought up, and I'm not an expert in this, but, I believe websites can be set up as sort of an organizational aspect where it's not one single person has the control over that website. And he did mention a few different methods. Oh, the site is back up. Great. Excellent. Bill Poster's telling me. But yeah, I think, having the website in control of the community where, if something goes down, multiple people have access to get it back up. And Jiggle had mentioned that let's see where, I can't remember where that post was, but that there is an organizational program that he uses. Let's see, depending on the tool chain code, GitHub. Organizational feature there are multiple web hosting static pages for free. Organizational feature. The domain could also be moved to a hoster which provides organizational feature. His favorite is a Swiss company called Infomaniac, but there's several others. So I reached out to Garrett, see if maybe the Tangle Pay team, and I would say just whatever organizational feature hoster Jiggle's experienced in could create, and then a few of us be on those as admins in case something happens. We could always get someone else on there if something happened to Jiggle. As well as the GitHub, he's going to start